Hi, and welcome to another episode of Health Coach for Women. Today, I have a lovely guest, Miss Tamara Zoner, who is Zoner, correct? Am I saying the name correctly?
Yes, Tamara Zoner.
Tamara Zoner. Okay, Tamara Zoner. I always like to make sure I get names correctly pronounced.
Thank
So,
you.
I have this lovely lady here who is a not only a speaker but a coach in the area of happiness. Please welcome Miss Tamara Zoner.
Thank you, Marsha.
You are quite welcome. So, first, now I see that you are in the coaching business, just as
Mhm,
myself, in the area of happiness.
mhm.
So, tell me first, how did you get started, and what led you to this point to where you are now?
Well, as most of us in the coaching industry, I was seeking to solve my own problem of unhappiness. and
Yeah.
and went on a real journey of reading books and learning from different teachers and experimenting with different tools. And ultimately, it led me to teaching the ones that worked best for me. So I got very strongly involved in passion and purpose, and then happiness.
Oh, we
Mhm,
sound like we are on the same page here. Definitely on the same page.
mhm.
And I also read in your bio that you are a single mom of three
I
and
am.
karaoke. Now, tell me a little. I thought that was a fun, interesting piece. Tell us a little bit about this karaoke enthusiast.
Well, it's so important when we are leading happy lives to do the things that bring us joy for no reason other than that they
Yes.
bring us joy. And so I love to sing, and I have no desire to be a professional singer. But I love to be on stage, whether I'm speaking or singing. I love to have an audience, and I love to make a crowd happy, and I love to feel happy, and singing brings that to me. So karaoke is like this really relaxed, easy, fun way where I can go live my rock star dreams for an hour or two
Right, right,
and then go home and not have to, do all that other junk that's associated with
right.
the
It's
music
just
industry.
something, yeah, just something all in fun. I love it.
Yeah.
Just having fun and feeling happy, whatever makes you feel good, that's the place that we all want to be in, being happy for no reason. You can wake up days, I know myself have woke up on some days and like, boy, I'm in a good mood and I'm happy with for no apparent reason, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good feeling. We don't always feel like that every day, but when we do, it's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah,
So
and that's really the goal, so that when we're not feeling that happy, we just allow it and we express those emotions too, because happiness isn't just about being happy. It's about embracing all of our human experience and emotions. And that's how we are happy for no reason, because we're not dependent on anything outside of us to make us happy. We bring happiness to our experience by honoring the whole thing.
that's right. That is absolutely correct. Now tell me, so what would you say now? How do you create this life of love, right? That they love, that sounds, you know, so for some people, because a lot of people are battling with self-love and depression,
Mhm, mhm.
so what are some of the things that you would recommend, for some good habits towards that journey of happiness?
The first one I always recommend is paying attention to the language we use. So, how are you talking to yourself? So, if you're battling depression or anxiety or unhappiness, well, why not instead make friends with it? Why not instead welcome it and embrace it? Why not allow it to be a communication instead of a battle? And we then seek, and we ask ourselves these questions. Well, what is it? What about my life don't I like? Where am I not honoring myself? Where am I not respecting myself? How am I showing up in a way that feels out of integrity? And when we start to ask ourselves these questions and bring more awareness into our experience, we then also level up ever so slightly that self respect, which leads to our self love. So,
Right.
like any relationship, there has to be respect first. And our relationship with ourselves is really no different from our relationship with other people, except that it's more important.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the key thing, is sometimes we want to make sure that we are there for other people and we
Mhm.
show up for other people, right? No
Yes.
matter who it may be, even in our
Mhm.
at work in our jobs and things like that, the career professionals, people who go to work every day. And we want to show up and be our best, and we put our best foot forward, and then sometimes we come home and we're stressed, and
Mhm.
because we're doing so much, and when your boss didn't recognize the good deed that you did, or dealing with that is a lot, so we try to show up for everyone else except for
Yeah.
ourselves, and we
Right.
are the most important.
We are, and it's backwards because the quality that we're giving isn't what it could be. So if we really want to show up as our best, we have to be our best when we show up. And so I liken it to a glass of water. Like I can keep pouring this out and pouring it out and pouring it out until it's empty. And then I'm, crashing at home exhausted. Or I can simply keep it full. I keep it full through
Exactly.
fun. I keep it full through journaling. I keep it full through, a hot bath when I need it. I keep it full through meditation or a night out with my best friends. I keep it full so that I'm serving and giving from the overflow and not emptying my cup at all.
That's exactly right. And that you make a good point on that. Also, when you mentioned something, when you talked about, keeping a full cup and journaling, you talked about
Mhm.
journaling. I know for me that journaling helps me on my journey. Days when I was feeling down and depressed, it helped me to get those emotions out. And a lot
Yeah.
of times when we're going through that period of depression, we keep it to ourselves.
Hmm.
We don't really share it with anyone. So for me, one of the things that I did was journaling, right? And so even if it meant, but it helps you to get out all those emotions and
Yes.
frustration, and you feel so much better when
Right.
you do that. So share a little bit about that on like journaling and how
Sure.
that helps.
I've been journaling since high school. It started in an English lit class and then I never stopped
Right.
because of that very reason. You can get everything out onto a page that you might be too afraid or embarrassed or ashamed to express to others. And you get it out of your head and onto a page and it's out of you then. And you can look at it in a more critical way and say, really, are these things all true? Is this what I want to keep repeating? And you do see the repetitive nature
Mhm.
of your thoughts, right? If you're writing the same thing day after day after day, it's that is great evidence that something within you needs to change. How
Exactly.
you look at the circumstance or how you approach it. And then journaling in different ways, right? Using different journaling techniques. So not always just event, but also journaling gratitude. Like, what are you grateful
Yes.
for? What is going well in my life?
Yes.
What is a beautiful experience that I had today? So when I'm through a period of what I call like contraction, I say
Mhm.
we're not necessarily happy or depressed, we're expanded or we're contracted and we flow in and out of these states. And when we're in a down, lower energy state like depression,
Right.
looking back at what we've said is good in our lives helps us so much. It helps us remember when it feels hard to. And the
It
more
definitely does.
specific we get, the better. Like I teach gratitude every year, right? Around November, I do a gratitude challenge in my Facebook group. And it's like, hey, don't just write, I'm happy for my family or I'm grateful for my family. Write down that hug that you got from your mom and how
Mhm.
grateful and lucky I am to still have my mom in my life,
Yes.
or how wonderful my dinner with my kids was. And that way I can step back into the emotion of it when I need that resource, when life doesn't feel
Exactly.
so happy or easy.
Exactly. And that led me into my next question on how do we stay positive when these awful and negative things happen, because we know that in life things happen, right?
Mhm.
There are some things that's in our control, and there are other things that are out of our control. We have no control over it. So how do we manage, so to speak? How do we manage dealing with the unexpected life events? COVID was a perfect example of that.
Mhm.
And, many people went into a real major depression, alcohol abuse, domestic violence,
Yeah.
it's increased, drug abuse, things like that, because they didn't know how to deal and adapt to
Right.
something such as devastating as that.
Right. I think making a practice of actually allowing yourself to feel what you feel is where
Hmm.
we start, because so many of us push down what we're feeling because we don't, it's uncomfortable. So we want to avoid them. But when we do that, we're just storing them. If we ignore our feelings, we store our feelings, and eventually they bubble back up to the surface. So allowing ourselves to feel the grief, to feel the sadness, to feel the loss, to feel the frustration or the joy or the laughter or the love, whatever those feelings are, if we can practice allowing them as they come, then we shift through them. We're not holding on to anything. We're in constant flow. And when,
That's one of the things I say in flow, living in a state of flow.
yeah,
That's it.
living in flow. So we don't push anything away. We allow all of it. We embrace all of it. We accept all of it, because that way we can keep moving through
Yeah,
it.
I agree with you 100% with that. Now tell us and our listeners, what would you say was one of the hardest challenges in your life that you had to face and you dealt with and overcame that? Obviously, you're still here, so you
Right.
made it through somehow.
Right. Right. Well, you mentioned earlier I'm a single mom, and so
Right.
there was a divorce, right? And
Hmm.
that was actually making the decision to leave the marriage was probably the hardest part of all of it, because I didn't want to be divorced. I had this dream, I had this
Hmm.
plan, and I had these three children, and I had to really look deeply. I had to get to the breakdown. I had to allow myself to cry on the floor for hours and hear what was really right for me and therefore my children. And that was to get out of a toxic, abusive marriage that was not showing my kids what I want them to see about relationships. And it was
Hmm.
destroying my own self respect and self love.
Right.
So deciding to move through that and then going through, you know, it's not just once the papers are signed that you're all better.
Right.
It's like with any trauma, there are layers and layers and layers that come up as we heal. And so
Mhm.
that's when I developed my practice for allowing and journaling out those feelings or dancing out those feelings or singing. That is one of my big tools,
Yeah.
out those feelings, so that they didn't just stick and then I didn't take them out on my children or other people that I love.
Definitely. And you made some key points that I was zooming in on. And when you said, you didn't want to stay in the relationship um, at that time, because it wasn't good, not only for yourself, but for your children. And you have
Mhm.
some people who makes the decision to stay longer because they don't want to separate the family. Now, I say those are it's a tough decision to make,
Mhm.
and I understand the reasoning behind it. But I think a lot of times you do more damage than good. I
Mhm.
think with the children, because they are seeing things and that teaches them, depending on their ages, this is how, and this is what develops these
Yes.
pathologies, patterns, right? So as the children grow up, they now get involved with men or people who are in abusive and toxic relationships because
Mhm.
it's what they experienced growing up. And you made a key point of that you decided to get out of that situation because it wasn't healthy for you, nor was it healthy for your children. And I think people need to understand that yes, your self-care is important and your family is important. You have to do what's best for you. You have to do the healthy, hard, tough decisions,
Mhm.
even as painful as it may be,
Mhm.
in order to really get to that place of happiness. So that's a great point that you pointed out, and I just wanted to touch in on that. That was really great.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. So another one, I want to ask you now, who are your biggest influences?
I
Who would
love
you
this
say your
question.
biggest influence? Yeah.
My biggest influence in my whole life was my grandmother. And I was fortunate enough to grow up next door to my grandparents, and I could just run down the hill to visit my grandma, who was an artist and had an art studio. So I could go in and watch her paint and watch her teach. I never actually picked up the talent for painting, but I got to watch her, and she was one of the happiest people I'd ever seen. My dad told me that he never in his whole life even heard her raise her voice. And she had 5 sons. So imagine that.
Wow.
And she just had this natural light and brightness. And I grew up wanting to emulate that because I would see how people would respond to her. And it was just so beautiful. Everyone felt better around Marion. And I love that so much. And she always had a great story to tell, and she always had a butterscotch for you, and she you know, she and as I became a parent and was fortunate enough to have her live a very long life, she lived until she was 101, so she met my children. And as a parent, I remember this day visiting with her, watching my kids, and saying, "Give Grandma Marion a hug." And she said, "Oh no, don't make them hug me. Don't make them hug anyone." And I said, "Okay, thank you so much for teaching me as a young parent to respect my children's bodies and teach them that their bodies are their own." Wow. Right then and there. And they were like, my son was a baby and he's 11 now. So they were a baby and 2 and 3 years old, or 3 and 4 years old. And she taught me that, and I took that in, and, never, ever again encouraged my kids to hug. I'd say, if you want to give them a hug, you can give them a hug, and it's up to you.
If you want to do that. Yeah, that is so, that is so deep. As you were saying it, I had to really take it and like, okay, you're teaching them, like, it's not because they may not feel comfortable, right? Because it's just like when you introduce your children when they're small to people, you may just genuinely say, "Oh, give them a hug." Well, they don't know them.
Naturally. Exactly.
They don't know them, so they may not feel comfortable doing that. And so we have to respect that just because they are children, that what they think and feel doesn't matter,
Right. Because then we teach them that. If we teach them that when they're little, then they grow up to be adults who think they don't matter. And that's where we have this crisis in self-esteem and confidence and self-love.
Definitely. And something as simple as a hug. I'm a hug person. I love giving hugs, so it's like something as simple as that, but a child, they may not want that hug. And that's understandably so. They have to get to meet you. They have to get to know who you are,
Right.
So that was interesting. That was, she gave you some good advice.
She did. And and that was when my kids were just so young, and it really made the hugest impact.
Wow. Something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Very awesome. So tell me now, when you work with clients, what are some of the things that they face? What are some of the hard challenges that they face, that you're able to help them with?
Most people come to me during some kind of transition in their lives. So maybe they've gone through divorce, or maybe they're suddenly empty nesters, or maybe, they've just moved into the area and they're seeking connection. And so I help them first connect with themselves and figure out for them what matters the most to them. And then I teach them how to say yes to themselves around those things, right? So if having deep, connected, emotionally fulfilling relationships and friendships is one of my passions, one of my drives, then we have to learn how to say yes to that when the opportunities arise. So many of us will be like, "Oh no, I have to stay home and clean the house," when someone asks us out for a coffee or a glass of wine or a lunch. And no, you say yes to the invitation. The house can wait, right? We say yes. So actually acting in support of what we want is one of the first tools. And it's deconditioning and deprogramming the ways that we were raised to give that hug, whether we want to or not, to do that thing, to put fun last instead of first, so that we can have more joy on a daily basis. So deconditioning is definitely one thing that I'm still working on for me and teaching others, right? We're always going to be doing that.
Exactly. And we are always constantly still learning and evolving. And I always talk about not being perfect, right? I say perfectly imperfect.
I say
It's
that
not
exact same
about,
thing.
right. You know what? It must be a reason why we
I
connected.
think so.
So it's not about getting it 100% right. It's not about having it so perfect, and even when I did my first podcast, the sound was horrible. Even my first video that I did, the lighting was bad, and I'm probably still need to work on getting better lighting. But it's okay because I'm not looking for the perfection in it. I'm looking for the message, the content that people are
Yes.
going to get from it. So I'm not concerned about all the other little things. You know what I mean? So I can
Yeah.
make tweaks and changes here and there. It's about doing better throughout life as you can every day, and learning and growing and evolving from your past mistakes, your past experiences. That's what it's all about. And you also, when you talked about, you know, honoring your yeses, we also need to honor our no's when we
Yeah,
need to tell people
exactly.
no, right? We talked about
Yes.
that glass, right, of being empty and
Hmm.
refueling and rebooting. We
Yes,
have to be able to also honor our no's and say when, I'm not able to commit at this time, but maybe
exactly.
at another, and be okay with it and be confident. And you don't always
Mhm.
have to give a reason why, because when
That,
you're not used to
exactly.
telling people no, guess
Oh
what? They
my
want
gosh,
to know why. Have you experienced that when you're not used to
so many
telling
times.
people no,
Oh, all the
they
excuses start
want to
coming
know
out.
why?
Hmm.
I don't have to give you an excuse.
Nope.
Know that I'm not able to do it at this time.
Exactly.
And you know what I would do? I would always catch myself doing it. Oh, well, I can't do this because such and it's like I have to, like, without you even asking me, I'm
Right.
volunteering and giving you a reason why. So it's that guilt part in me. It's the guilt part, like, well, if I say no, this, that, you don't have to give an explanation.
Nope.
Just respect it as a no, and that's it. If I care to give you more information, then I'm free to do so. If not, then you
Right.
have to respect that.
Yeah. And
So
it's
yeah,
and that can take some practice. And so I
it,
always,
let me tell you, it didn't come right away. It does
right.
take practice.
Yeah. I
Well,
even had one client write that on her board by her phone so that when she had to respond, negatively, she had like a script. Thank you for asking, and I'm not able to commit to that today.
Oh, I love it. I love that. I love
It's so very much like, I love you and appreciate you and thank you. And I love and appreciate and respect myself
it.
too.
Right, right. That is so true. And just like you said, I had one client that I was working with at the time, and she was telling me, well, I have this person that when we talk on the phone, she just want to spill out all of her baggage because
Hmm.
people just want somebody to talk to.
Sure.
But it became where it was draining for her.
Hmm.
It was draining for her. So I had to let her know you can come politely. When it's becoming too draining for you, you have to politely interrupt and end the conversation.
Yeah.
Whatever way you have to, because now it's becoming too much draining for you, because all
Hmm.
they want to do is just spill, spill, spill.
Right.
But you do it in a kind way, in a
Yeah.
loving way that they can respect and honor, honor what you're saying, and they're okay with speaking to you at another time.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
creating and keeping healthy boundaries for yourself, especially when you're working on bringing more
Exactly.
joy into your experience. We need,
Exactly.
there's that quote, I think it's Jim Rohn, who says, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
in my happiness talks, we talk about your garden, so the relationships. Do you have
Right.
beautiful flowers that nourish you and bring oxygen into the air, or do you have these toxic weeds cutting off your circulation, right? So
Right.
cleaning up your garden and teaching people how to treat you, right? That's that, setting those clear boundaries and saying, I hear that you have a lot going on in your life, and
Right.
I've got about 5 minutes and then I'm going to need to go, or we can change the conversation to what's good with you.
Right.
you know
Right. And just doing it in a polite fashion where people
Hmm.
have to, be able to respect those boundaries that you set in place.
Right.
But you have to set those boundaries in
Yeah,
place.
and you have to
Yeah.
respect them to teach
And
other people to
right,
respect them.
right.
Hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So what else would you like us to know? What else would you like us to know about you and your work and what you have to offer?
Sure. Well, I love speaking to audiences, and now that things are finally starting to come back into person, I love to present on happiness to groups, to women's groups, to corporate groups, because goodness knows corporate needs more happiness. And I also have a local group. I'm in the Detroit metro area, like the edge of the metro area,
Mm-hmm.
and we meet locally once a month, and it's called Create a Life You Love. And we sit in a big giant physically distanced, socially connected circle and talk about, how to bring more awareness into your life so that you can consciously create this life experience that you want to be having and not
Right.
the one you don't want. So you can find me on Facebook. Tamara Zoner's not a very common name. So you can search that. And I have this great Facebook group as well, same name, Create a Life You Love. And they can also find me on my website by just typing in tamarazoner.com.
Awesome. Awesome. So, in any other final thoughts, any upcoming projects that you're working on that now you work with both men and women or
I do.
mostly women? Okay.
I
That's
set
great.
out to work with women and the men keep coming. So
Yeah. Right. Yes. So yeah, you have to when you see that maybe that's when you say, okay, well, and believe it or not, they need help as well. They need help as
they
well.
do. Both of my
Because
one-on-one clients right now are men.
they're men.
Hmm.
Yeah, but the thing with men, a lot of times for men, they don't want to ask for help. A lot of
Right.
times they don't want to ask for help.
Right. Because they've,
Yeah, and
grown up having to be this strong
right, right, and
person.
especially when it comes to asking help to another man. So I think they feel more comfortable when they're
Mhm.
dealing with a woman.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
that's what I'm picking up on. So yeah, but that's great. So what projects are you working on?
Well, I am actually working on a course. So it will be a Zoom class and it's creating the foundation for a life you love. So it's all the juiciest pieces that I have taught in the last 7 years now of how to consciously create a life that you love and teaching you not only about how to identify your priorities in life but also teaching you how your mind works for or against you so
That's
you can get
right.
it on board. And then all the great tools that support it, breathing and meditation
Mhm,
and journaling
mhm.
practices. So, yeah,
That's right.
that is
And
coming
you know
up.
what? That's awesome. And so all of that information will be in the description at the end of the episode
Great.
that they can get the information. You know, we're in pretty much in the same line of work, and I know for some people it's like, oh, we're doing the same thing. So, maybe it wouldn't be the, right fit. I feel like there's someone for everyone,
Hmm.
and there's enough for everyone.
Yes.
So maybe, you may not, some people listening may not resonate with me too much, may not. And so that's why I'm open and I don't worry about this and that. Or, like some people, like, oh, well, you're working, it's like a competitive market. I don't worry about that,
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
because there's someone for everyone, like I said. So there
Yes.
may be someone who's going to connect with you in a way that, what, something about her, something about
Hmm.
her. I think I want to connect with her. That's perfectly fine. It's
Yes.
getting the help that you need to get
Yeah.
to the place that you're trying to go. That's what matters. That's all that
Absolutely.
matters. Yes. So I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. I really enjoyed speaking with you. It's like we had so much in common and we
Hmm.
experienced some of the same thing. And I also, was a single mom, so we can connect on so many different ways, different levels. Any other final thing that you would like to say before we close?
To anyone listening, just remember that you have everything you need within you, even if it's just the question, can you help me? Like you have
Right.
it within you. So practice, 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 because that's all life is.
That's it.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Marsha. It's been an
You
absolute
are
joy
quite
talking to you.
welcome. Thank you so much.